Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to the Disney Movie Marathon. This episode is part of a series I made for my main podcast, I Heart Movies, in 2021. I don't have anything new to add to or edit from this one, so I'm going to leave it as is, and we can get right into the episode. Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to the Disney Movie Marathon. This month I'm doing another mini-series, this time looking into Disney's journey into live action. We technically have touched on some of this, like in our episode on The Reluctant Dragon and films like Fantasia, or even several of the package films, which featured a melding of animation and live action. But Walt really wanted to keep pushing the boundaries of what his studio was doing, and started making real strides towards live action in the 40s, starting with today's film, Song of the South. Now, of course, I'm sure most people listening to this have heard of this film. It's kind of Disney's black sheep of the family. They barely even want to acknowledge its existence, save for its one song, Zippity Doo Dah, which they'll claim any day of the week. But even if you've heard of it, there's a pretty good chance you've never seen it, and that's by design. For a variety of reasons, most of which have to do with race, Disney has basically hidden this film away for decades. They kind of did away with the Disney Vault when Disney Plus came out, but it still exists for a handful of films. Mostly this one. There's no official way to watch this movie, but it's still available in places like archive.org if you want to go searching for it. So given how fraught this film is with controversy, I knew I had to be sensitive if I was going to ever cover it. And as a fan of Disney history, I couldn't not cover it. I mean, I planned to cover it all the way back at the beginning of this podcast. I even mentioned it in the trailer before the first episode of I Heart Movies, back then when it was called the I Heart Podcast, that this was one that I eventually wanted to get to. Here we are, probably over 3 years later, finally getting to it. So, in order to be fair, balanced, and hopefully sensitive to the subject matter, I decided that instead of just getting one guest, I would recruit a whole panel of guests. I have a lot of friends who like movies and or Disney, so I had plenty of people I could choose from, but I wanted to make sure that each guest would have something different to say. To that end, I got together 4 guests, each with a unique perspective. Rachel Wagner, who is a film critic and Disney fan, Eli Sanza, who is a huge film history buff and specializes in Disney history, Jenna West, who works at Disneyland and is up to date on the film's presence in the parks, and Sarah North, my cousin and a big history buff who has read a lot about the time period depicted in the movie, which, contrary to popular belief, is actually post-Civil War during the Reconstruction era. Okay, I think that's all I've got for now. Let's get into this episode, which has been a long time coming, Song of the South. I guess the first thing we could all talk about, like, our general reaction to the movie, like what we think of it overall, or if you have like a history with the movie. For me, the first time I watched this was 2 nights ago when I wrote my notes. So I've never seen this before.
I didn't grow up with this either.
Yeah. Not that it would have been that easy to grow up with. It's kind of
My
sort of
mother
hidden.
remembers books, 1 or more books.
I vaguely remember a book on tape at the library because I remember the animated characters.
But I had no memory of this. I didn't know that this is where Zippity Doo Dah came from.
Yeah. So I guess the reason that I picked all the people who are here today is for all different reasons. I guess we can start with Rachel. Rachel, I picked you because you're just kind of a general film critic, film fan, and I know you've talked about Song of the South before, and I thought you might have a good perspective on the movie.
Well, thank you. It's always nice to be invited. I don't remember if I saw Song of the South. They did a re-release in the 80s. I think the last one was like 85, but I would have been like really
86.
small. 86, yeah. So I would have been like a kindergartner if I had seen it. But I don't recall seeing it, but I saw it I reviewed it for my blog a couple of years ago, and I just was thoroughly underwhelmed. Like, yes, it has all of the offensive stuff that people don't like, and I totally get it, but it's just such a bland, boring, lame movie that I just think they should just release it and move on. It is not worth it. It is not worth all. I feel like all the controversy makes it seem like it's this special movie or worthy of some kind of discussion, but it's really not. I like James Baskett. I think he's charming. Mm-hmm. And I think that Zippity Doodah is a pretty fun song, and the animation is good for the era. It's fine. But it's just not a good movie, in my opinion.
I like that he's starting with you and your underwhelmed opinion about this. Like, okay, guys, this is not worth being excited about.
It's not worth it. It's just release it and move on.
Well, we can move on to Eli then, because I think Eli likes it a little bit better than you do. I wanted Eli on the podcast because he's kind of a film history aficionado, kind of like old Hollywood and Disney movies in particular are kind of a specialty. So I thought he would have a good perspective. And I saw some tweets the other day when you were watching it. It seems like you actually liked it. So what's your take on Song of the South, Eli?
Yeah, my take is kind of the opposite of Rachel's. I a little bit, because I sort of understand what he's saying. There are some things about it that are flawed, that make the movie flawed, and it's got problems. But I thought that it did a good job doing what it set out to do. Like, okay, so the main thing I liked obviously was the animated segments. I thought the animated segments involving the rabbit and the fox and the bear, I thought those were really well done. And I thought those were, and most people agree with that. Those are the highlights of the film, and also the animation and the songs are really like some of the best that Disney has ever done, I think. And so those I think are the best parts. The live action scenes are kind of mediocre. They're not like, I said before when I was talking about this movie that the story isn't that deep and the characters aren't that three-dimensional. It's just a really simple story. And that, I think, is one of the main reasons why it's sort of mediocre. It has the reputation of being mediocre. But I'm sort of a sucker for like sentimental stories. I think that might be why I'm going a little easier on it, because I think it has a big heart. And I think James Baskett in particular is a really good emotional anchor, because he is a really good actor. He's a really good actor, and he is like, he has like so much authenticity in his performance that it seems like it's easy to love him. It's easy to like be empathetic towards him. And his relationship with Bobby Driscoll's character Johnny is like another like central part of the film that I think is well handled. Just like, all this stuff makes me think it's better than average. It's still, like I said, it's still got problems, but I think it handles what it tries to do really well.
And what about you, Jenna? What are your thoughts? I wanted you to come on the show because I know you liked it a little more than Rachel did from what you were telling me. Plus, you're familiar with the theme park stuff, which there is kind of a theme park controversy in addition to the regular controversy too. So I know you're kind of up on theme park stuff, and I'm definitely not.
Oh yes, and also I kind of know a little bit about the development history of the film, which, if you don't know, was actually intimately involved with Alice, like what they were going to do with Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, no, I did not know that.
Oh yeah, there's actually this huge history between it. You can almost call it like Alice of the South. It was supposed to be a live action movie with a live action Alice and Lewis Carroll, but over time, Walt decided that to replace it with the Uncle Remus, because he always liked the Brer Rabbit stories, but also he was getting a lot of people like being really annoying, like, are you doing it right? Do you need consultation? And Uncle Remus is a fictional character, so he could do what he wanted with it. But anyway, I'm rambling. I should talk about me. I grew up with the Splash Mountain attraction. We did not have it in any accessible media form. That's the only way I knew about it. And I I remember always bugging my parents, like, what movie is this? Why don't we have it? Can we get it? And they're like, I don't know what movie this is. Shut up. But personally, I do like it. But I think Rachel's right. At the same time, it is mediocre, but that's kind of why I like it. It's like, I think you are both right. But the reason why I find it so interesting is it's kind of like the proto Mary Poppins. That's the way I see it. Like Song of the South walked so Mary Poppins could run. And like I see a lot of similarities. I could kind of see how Walt, it's like, I could do something like this like better. And that's how Mary Poppins was born. And I don't know, there's something charming in it about how bad it is.
Well, I mean, I just think that if it was just a random Disney live action film, I'd just like, whatever. But like it's there's so much talk and discussion about it, and it's such a thing. And so you expect something like that to be better, I think, when there's so much controversy. And then when you watch it and it's just like, what?
I agree with you because it's made out to be a lot worse than it really is.
Just watch it.
Well, because it was banned. It was banned. Like if it was.
Oh,
banned.
it's not technically banned though. Disney just won't release it.
It's just buried.
Well, yeah. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's like they're just keeping it so locked in the vault. People can't help but be curious about it, which makes it seem like it's more interesting than it is.
Yeah, like to be honest, Disney did this to themselves. They shot themselves in the foot. If they had just released on a home video in the 90s, people would just be like, "Oh yeah, that is kind of cringy."
And just put like a smoking thing before it. Like we don't. There may be some things in here that you're not gonna like, and also they,
I actually think from watching it a couple nights ago, they've released worse stuff. Like I think the Rachel stuff in Peter Pan is worse than this.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The Pete's Dragon has a whole group that have a bill of sale for a human, and they say they own the human for they own Pete, and they want him back so they can have him be a slave. And
that's played for humor too.
Well, yeah, it's a barrel of laughs. And they're also going to take the dragon and they're going to make a tonic out of him, and that's the main plot of the movie. I mean, there's just so many better, more interesting live action Disney films that it's like, why aren't we talking about them? They should just release this and move on. Nobody will care 5 minutes after they see it because it's so bland.
I remember none of that from Pete's Dragon. I watched it like once, thought it was kind of blah, and mainly remember that Candle on the Water song and the romance and how he finally made it back to her. So yeah, I don't remember the dragon tonic thing.
They are. There's a whole song about it. We're gonna turn him into a tonic.
The best part about Pete's Dragon is really Jim Dale, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think Candle in the Water is my favorite part about Pete's Dragon, but I don't know. I just feel like it has this legacy as like being really important and I'm not saying it's not offensive. It does have offensive stuff, but it's just such a bland movie that I'd rather talk about Gone with the Wind. It's way more interesting.
I feel like Gone with the Wind, there's more interesting discussion about whether it's you should cancel it or whether it's worth preserving.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, we have one more guest that we haven't introduced. My cousin Sarah is here.
Yeah,
sorry.
You guys are going into coffee shop intellectual mode. Like, that's how I feel about this other thing.
Well, I really wanted Sarah to join in on this one because she gets into the history of stuff. And I knew she'd have a good perspective.
I was the most reluctant guest because it's like, oh, this is controversial. I don't know. This feels awkward. But I was like, is anybody going to talk about like the 1800s history and the, political controversy of the 40s, and he didn't really think so. It's like, I may have to come on because I really want to talk about it.
Oh, I'm glad you're coming on then, because like I know a little bit, but not enough to really talk about it. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Walt was a fan of these Uncle Remus novels. They were very popular at the time, right?
Well, they would have had to have been rather popular. And I can get into that, but I think I'm supposed to be saying how I felt in general about the movie at the moment. And it really is a mixture of what you guys are saying. Like, I think that James Baskett was, like, he's the best thing about the movie to me. Mm-hmm. I think he's just such a sweetheart. And I wasn't that, like, I thought that the plot line didn't tell you enough about what was actually going on with his dad and why we were supposed to be so upset. And I thought it was rather hammy, but his little friend, like, I liked Johnny's friends better than Johnny. Like the little girl and the other little boy who brought him the frog, and
I think his name was Toby.
Toby, oh my goodness, Toby was so cute. And that other little girl, Ginny, oh my goodness, so cute, and that tiny little voice, and that whole thing about her nasty brothers and their poor dress. Anyway, but no, I don't know if I'd ever rewatch it because it just didn't pull me in that much. Mm-hmm. Like, the cartoons didn't pull me in that much, and the story didn't feel like it was fleshed out enough to me, but there were cozy elements of it. Like, oh my goodness, the choir type singing that they had, I thought was absolutely gorgeous. I wouldn't mind having that on a CD for when I'm out driving. And yeah, Uncle Remus was great.
That was the Hall Johnson choir. Yeah, they were great.
That was gorgeous. Yeah, if you know where I can find more of that. Yeah, so those two things are probably...
Isn't that the same group that was the Crows in Dumbo?
I can't remember, but it might have been. It might have been.
That was talent. That was cool.
Yeah.
Yes, they were the Crows.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I have looked
them. That's what I thought.
I have looked them up then, so I should look them up again. But yeah, I can keep my general comment. I'm sure we'll be discussing things in more detail in a second here. So that was kind of my general impression of, like, kind of one and done. I mean, maybe I'd go back and watch snippets of it, but yeah.
I mean, from what I have read is that Walt actually thought by showcasing these Uncle Remus books that he was actually doing something kind of progressive, that he was doing something telling, in his mind, he was telling the African-American stories. And
there seemed to be, I think there might have been some push during the war to really try and improve relations there. It was very hard for him to win in that situation. He already had someone cautioning him, like you could end up with the people who hate Black people being unhappy and the people who love Black people being unhappy. The Hayes office was like, be very clear that this, make sure that people know that this is in the 1870s, that this wasn't during slavery. And he didn't make that clear enough and got in trouble.
Well, and even at the time when it was released, there was people that the NAACP and other people that came out against the film. It's not like this is a cancel culture thing.
Part of the problem, well, I feel like there was more of the mood back then of today than we realize. Part of what happened with the NAACP is that they mistakenly thought that it was set during slavery and that it was presenting this glorified picture. One of them was like, oh, it's so beautiful that it's hard to be mad at it. But still, I mean, they literally thought it was beautiful, but they felt that it contained all of the cliches of the book, is the way they put it. And they didn't like the African-American English, which I have opinions about that too. I mean, there were picket lines outside, and there were one of them was actually singing to the tune of Jingle Bells. Disney tells lies about the South. I just had to include that. I mean,
I just think, though, sometimes you hear that, Disney is caving to the woke mafia or whatever, and it's like, no, there was from the very beginning.
There was pressure, like, from God. There were a lot of people unhappy. There were people, like I say, literally picketing, and this was not in just one location. This was in others, in different cities. So
it's not something that's like new, that it's controversial.
No. I mean,
I don't think a lot of people realize that.
And I was a little bit surprised, even though I'm interested in this type of history, to find out just how probably on edge that they were at the time, because it's so easy to look back and think, oh, they just did whatever and said whatever and were disrespectful. But there were people who cared, and there were people who were like, don't you dare step on toes here.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting.
Yeah, even back then, there were like African Americans who saw that film, and they thought that the Black vernacular of how the Black characters in that movie talked was like exaggerated to how they actually talk, and that's one of the main controversies involved in the film.
And here's my question too, because this is long enough. I mean, yes, some of them probably, I would imagine some of these people had grandparents who had been enslaved. But I wonder how many of them knew how people were talking in the 1870s. Like, how many of us can say how our grandparents' generation talked on the street? It's one of those things where I feel partly knowledgeable and partly ignorant, because, say, I love Mark Twain, and the dialect that he wrote was a very, very thick accent that's fun to read. And I just question, was this worth being offended about? Like, you have people who haven't been in the country that long, and they have accents and they have vernacular, and it's like, are you unintentionally erasing part of history by being offended that this happened? I mean,
it's a difficult topic, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people back then should be commended that they spoke fluent English at all. If you've come from a foreign country and all of a sudden you have to cope with this situation. So I don't know. I just go ahead.
Well, that's a good question. It's interesting because the Joel Chandler Harris, the man who was the author of the Uncle Remus stories, he grew up on a plantation, and he talked with slaves.
Yeah. See, you're touching on what I wanted to talk about so badly, because I think unless you take the context of the author of these stories into consideration, that it's much more easy to be offended. And once you know the backstory of the author, because if you just thought, it's some random white guy, you could think, he's exaggerating. But this was somebody who his father abandoned him a few days after he was born. His mother was an Irish immigrant. He had red hair. And yes, kindness was bestowed on them and they did okay, but he felt really self-conscious about being from an unwed family his whole life. And he took a job on a newspaper. Oh, let me see. I wrote down the name of it. I won't be able to find it now. He was born in 1848. Okay, so he was old enough to remember the Civil War very well, and he would have worked on a newspaper during that time on this plantation. So he was it was called The Countryman.
The Countryman, right.
And he is said to have spent hundreds of hours, not just, but hundreds of hours in the slave quarters. And he felt like because of his insecurities, his humbler background, that he actually was able to forge a deeper connection with those people. And when he went to write those stories, which started out as a serial and were compiled into a book in late 1880, he said that he wrote them, and I quote, to preserve in permanent shape those curious mementos of a period that will no doubt be sadly misrepresented by historians of the future. So make of that statement what you will, but obviously he cared about those people and he cared about their stories, which he was writing down, African-American oral tradition, and his intentions were very, very good. So anybody who wants to look at that and say, oh, this is inappropriate or whatever, I think they need to think about the source too, and to be careful that in censoring something that they're not also erasing cultural history. Like, these are people's oral traditions.
Yeah. That's actually another thing that gets me. I mean, Joel Chandler Harris did write the book that this movie is based on, but he didn't make up the stories. They were from African Americans. Actually, they have a root, like the Tar Baby story, for instance. I just recently found this out by complete coincidence because of I'm uploading episodes of a rare anime from the 70s, and they have a story that really closely mimics the Tar Baby story. So I was like, what's going on here? And I found out it actually, this Tar Baby story comes from Africa.
And they think that it could actually trace, like iterations of it can trace back to potentially India and Iran.
Yeah.
And like
Pakistan,
all of these different countries, like South America of all places.
Bahamas. Yeah. So he didn't come up with these stories.
So you got to wonder too if these stories were also kind of traveling with Africans to different countries too, and evolving. I don't know, but that's a whole rabbit hole that you could fall down into as well.
Yeah. But Joel Chandler Harris was also he was pro racial reconciliation, right? He liked the fact that slaves were being freed.
And I would have to dig into that deeper, but this is definitely not somebody who was just trying to
make fun of how slaves talked.
Use them as a way to make money and just be flippant about it. No, this is somebody who cared.
Yeah, and it's like I have tried to read the stories, like
Good
the
for
way
you,
he
I
wrote
haven't.
it. I tried. It was really hard for me, and I was like, the only way I can read this is like sounding it out myself, and I feel horrible when I do that, so I didn't read it.
Well, also there's sort of the idea that is problematic, that the Black characters are somehow sort of childlike in there's something sort of, I don't know, that they're
naive.
Naive, maybe even stupid.
I've seen that in movies, and I did not get that from this one. Like, the cook, she's not taking guff, and she's a capable person, and Uncle Remus is like the wisest one in the film. So,
yeah, I got that too. It didn't seem like.
If anything, the white people are really stupid. Besides the kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe not stupid, but like cuddly and kind of like cute in a way that's a little bit like makes you a little uncomfortable, I think.
Well, it
fair enough.
make me, so I don't know what that says about me, but I wasn't uncomfortable by that. Like, I don't know.
You know, it's kind of the whole mammy idea in Gone with the Wind. You know that I don't know. I don't know about birth of no babies, and that kind of idea is awkward.
I mean, it was a little. Song of the South was a little bit better in the way they represented Black people than earlier Hollywood films. Not much better, but the fact that like Walt Disney actually was like he actually wanted James Basket. Walt Disney actually loved James Basket so much he like lobbied for him to get an Oscar. And because he knew he was such a professional that he was like he admired him, and he was
the first African American to get an honorary Academy Award.
Yeah, especially the way they treat him at the end when they're not going to let him spend any time with Johnny at the end is kind of, I don't know. I just think it's not the best.
That's not how it resolved, though, was it? Also, I have a question. I'm going to get an opinion poll. Did Uncle Remus have a flirtation going on with that cook? Or did he just want her, or did he just want her pie or something?
Yes, definitely. I feel like the whole sometime you'll be coming around. I don't know. It's flirty to me. Yeah.
I thought so.
I think it seems flirty to me. It seems like they didn't lean into that, but I feel like it was subtle. I feel like it was supposed to be there.
Kind of like on Man from Snowy River, where he's chasing the cooker. It's like, okay, they don't really end up together in the end, but they obviously were interested in each other. Anyway, that's a total side note. That probably will get edited out. Anyway, we were going somewhere else with that until I interjected.
We haven't heard what Jonathan thought of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about that.
My thoughts are kind of an amalgamation of everybody's. I didn't think it was that great, but it was enjoyable enough. And I think that Uncle Remus was the best character. I didn't like Johnny very much. I thought he was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Like, why was he so upset? I don't get it. Like, was his dad supposed to be gone indefinitely? Like, if your dad's just away on business for a little while, you don't need to run away from wherever and get gored by a bull or whatever happened. I mean, I guess he didn't get gored, but I mean, what's going on there?
The thing about that story, what I noticed when I was watching it, that they didn't make it clear about why the dad was leaving. Mm-hmm. They only leaned in on the fact that the son was sad about it, and that was the only point.
And they were acting like it was wrong for him to be gone. Mm-hmm. Well, why? Because for a lot of men, like, they have to go away and do things and then come back. And
he's a reporter, isn't he?
Like, he was working for a newspaper. And,
yeah, it's kind of like, don't reporters travel?
And they act like there's some kind of controversy, but it's like, why are they being left at, however you want to say it, the plantation? Mm-hmm. And he's gone. Like, that was one of the things that really bugged me about this, is that they really didn't tell you everything that was going on.
And I feel like that was an odd story choice, because I feel like if I were directing that movie, I would have made it clear why he was leaving.
Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of a leftover from the Alice version, believe it or not.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, because in the Alice version, Alice's parents have left to go traveling on some important business trip or something. It doesn't make any sense considering, her dad was the dean of the university, but should be there. But so she was left in the care of the governess, and the whole point is supposed to be like the parents aren't there. So it seems like to me they just kind of like transported that from the original Alice draft, and they just kind of like, who cares?
They took an odd plot line and transformed it into another odd plot line.
Yeah. See, this film has a weird, interesting history.
And the thing is, this would have been really bad if they had said it, say, during the Civil War, but it would make more sense. Like if
why the dad would have to go.
Yeah, he's going off to war and Johnny's really upset. Well, yeah, we get it why Johnny's really upset. But with this one, it's like, well, what's going on with the newspaper that's this bad?
I do kind of wonder if maybe when they did transplant it to Song of the South, maybe they were thinking about putting it during the Civil War.
I don't know.
And then they changed their minds.
Well,
this movie went through so many screenplay changes. Maybe that could have been part of it, like at one point, but then they dropped it. Like, who knows?
The history of the film's development is sadly lacking. I feel like there's just the only reason why I know about the Alice stuff is because I do Alice.
Yeah,
like a lot of people don't know about the Alice history link with the film. So I feel like we're missing a lot of the story treatments this film went through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. I only know vague stuff about it. Like, I don't know any detailed.
Yeah.
Well, that would make the most sense to have it be a plot thread left over from another draft that they didn't fill in. But they should have filled it in, because that was my main issue with this. Is like, why is this kid such a whiner?
I feel like Walt probably wanted something about, because when you think about it, there's a similar theme in Mary Poppins as well about parents not being engaged with their children. And I feel like he wanted something like that. But
is this like looping back to his childhood or something, and we just don't know?
He did have a very bad relationship with his dad.
Oh no!
He did.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Walt did, he is projecting. He is projecting when he does this.
Yeah, Elias Disney used to like force him. I'm just gonna say it. Walt was kind of abused.
He was. Yeah.
He loved his dad, but he wasn't the greatest dad. I'll just leave it there.
Was he kind of rough and neglectful?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say the biggest thing he did was like make Walt work as a kid, and he made him do like newspaper routes where he had to like go out in the freezing snow, and he was like
in the middle of the night. He had to wake up at like 4 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah,
that almost sounds like of the times. Like I halfway joked with Jonathan one time we were doing a review, because it's like they didn't have time for disorders. They had to go out and work, and make a living for their family. You know? Like,
right, but he would beat him with his belt though, so it was a little bit more than just the.
Basically, he probably felt like there wasn't the tenderness along with that harsh discipline and that rigorous life to balance out.
And Walt was always trying to impress his dad and make him proud of him. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the anecdote of when he showed him his studio, like when he built the Burbank studio after Snow White, what his dad said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did his dad say?
His dad said, "This would be better as a hospital."
See, so okay, so he's basically one of those where if he had made him work really hard, and if he had been harsh, but if he had also been like, wow, I am proud of you, this is great, like all of that would have gone away probably. But the fact that he could never please him and probably felt emotionally neglected by him, probably, from what you're saying, this would inform these plot lines.
Yeah.
So he's definitely
he was also scarred by the fact that he kind of was somewhat responsible for killing his mother she was killed in a gas leak in the house that
wasn't that his dad too, or just his mom?
I thought it was
both his parents. He bought them a new house, and there was a gas leak.
His mom, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. So did Walt feel responsible for her death, or did he?
He did.
Yeah.
I personally think he shouldn't have, but I get it.
I think, that's human nature of like, wow, if I did this and then this happened, and so it's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this is cheerful.
But I mean, it is instrumental to understanding why there's this plot line in the movie, right?
So it was just his mother. I think his father had already died.
Oh, did he die earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
But he was still working through his stuff, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that Walt thought that he had these books that he thought were charming, and he thought, oh, let's tell these stories. Let's tell these African American stories. And I think, at least this is the impression that I've gotten, and that he was kind of surprised / maybe even a little hurt that the response was what it was. But really, I mean, now we can look back and be like, well, of course there was this response. These weren't his stories to tell. These weren't his.
Well, but who else was going to tell them
at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That's interesting because he was disappointed with the reaction to the film, because he thought this was going to be, you know how Walt Disney is. You Disney fans who are historians know how Walt when he gets an idea for a movie, he's the most enthusiastic person ever, and he was like just like with Fantasia, just like with Bambi, he thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever. And so his expectations weren't met. And it was, but like you say, it's not surprising that this is the reaction. I feel like he should have known, this was a kind of a tightrope to make this kind of movie. And it was like a movie that takes place during the era of slavery. I mean, he should have known that this was not going to be easy.
You know what just occurred to me? It's like, this is during the war years. This is also close to the time that he would have had strikes and been dealing with the uncertainty of the war and or the strike. So
the strike was crazy.
He was not having a great time, was he? And then during that, was it during that one of his parents died and he was in South America and he didn't get,
Oh yeah, it was in that documentary.
And he didn't make it back for the funeral. Yeah, it was like difficult because of the nature of travel at the time. So yeah, he was having a great time, wasn't he, guys?
No, the 1940s were a really tough decade for him. There was a lot of bad stuff was happening, and like it was like that was sort of the decade when Walt started becoming less involved in the production of animated movies, because, like, you know, how in the 1950s he started doing his television show and his theme park and live action movies more often. It was like that was because he was like turned off by animation in the 40s, because there was so much bad stuff happening in the 40s. It just became associated.
Yeah, and he had the strikes, which were very devastating to him. I'm not saying they weren't deserved, but they were devastating to him because he saw himself as building this kind of quasi family. Yeah. So the fact that his family would strike against him, and they probably had every right to strike, but to him, in his perspective, it was very devastating. But one thing that I don't think that Disney is given quite enough credit for is that for the time, he was pretty progressive as far as hiring female animators, hiring people of color, hiring
nobody talks about Floyd Norman enough.
I was just going to bring him up. Floyd Norman.
He loves this film, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He will defend Walt Disney that he was a really great boss and that he was a great person to work for.
Who's Floyd Norman?
Floyd Norman is an animator that worked for Disney, still alive and really charming. I saw him at FanX a while back, and I got a picture with him at D23. He's really great, and he has a blog where I don't know if he's still writing in it, but he had a blog for a long time, and he has just been a rigorous defender of Walt Disney.
He was the first African American artist at the studio.
Yes.
And I think that's telling when somebody works for you and says, I mean, not if you're Bobby Driscoll, like there are more than one opinion, but the fact that, and the little boy who played Toby, he grew up and he moved on from, that might have been the only movie that he did, but he thought highly of Walt, I believe, too.
Like almost everyone who worked with Walt Disney personally said that he was great. Like that's the thing. Like,
and that's telling, like, because there's a lot of room for grievance there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Floyd said something to the effect of that he never saw anything that he didn't feel like was deserved. That somebody that is, as far as being a boss. And, that he would chew people out, but that there was never anything that he felt like was undeserved or
crossing the line.
Crossing the line, yeah, exactly.
And there's a difference between being totally verbally abusive and being like, hey, this is not okay. And I don't know. I wasn't there, but I believe you. So.
Mm-hmm. Walt Disney was a perfectionist. That was the thing. It was like he was such a perfectionist that he if everyone wasn't giving it 100%, then he got frustrated, but he never took it out on anyone in particular.
Wasn't he known for like being silent and people would be scared? He was silent.
Probably
was like, oh no, he doesn't like it.
Especially Pinocchio, that one was redone, which it makes sense because that's your second movie. It's everyone's going to have their eye on it.
With another negligent father figure.
A little bit, but at least
dare
he
you about
Geppetto. He tries.
Yes. He was trying, but my goodness. Here, go off to school by yourself, you
You
newly...
1 day old baby.
I mean, that's the way it was. Yeah, but 1 day old. Yeah, just go.
I mean, he ends up in the whale for Pinocchio.
That was the worst first day of school ever. So.
Now I'm just gonna be on the lookout for this with Disney films. Like, oh, how was the father figure on this one? Were they asleep at the helm?
Yeah, that is kind of funny though. It's just like figure out where the school is, have fun. Bye.
Oh dear. Oh my goodness. Anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel a little bad sometimes for Walt because I feel like anytime he tried to do anything sort of creatively ambitious, it never really worked all that well. And then he would do something mainstream and more appealing, and then it would do great. It would just go gangbusters.
That was the frustrating thing. That was the frustrating thing because he was super creative, but he the world wasn't like ready for a lot of his stuff. He was ahead of his time with Fantasia.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking right there.
Fantasia, Pinocchio, but then Snow White and Dumbo do really well.
Is it just the thing of the
Cinderella?
Wasn't Snow White still like a creative ambitious project though? Because no one thought it was going to work.
It was, but I think it still is. No, I mean it still was fairly mainstream as far as like the story and the thing. I mean, and then it would have been really. It wasn't
as ambitious as Fantasia.
Right, and then he does Cinderella. That's a huge hit. He does Alice in Wonderland, which is more sort of out of the box, I think, and it doesn't do very well. And then he does something like Lady and the Tramp, which is more mainstream, and it does really well. So I don't know.
So you have to put out the fluffy stuff in order to fund your art.
Yeah. And that's right. Yeah. Because he really didn't like 101 Dalmatians. He kind of hated it.
I kind of love it. So
I love it. I absolutely adore it.
That's a great movie.
It is.
It's the only reason why he didn't. The only reason why he didn't like it is because I don't think he liked the animation process because he was like a huge proponent. He was like a huge proponent of like Sleeping Beauty looked good, but like 101 Dalmatians was completely different. It looked sketchier, and he didn't like that downgrade.
Yeah, I could kind of see that.
Whereas now I look at it and to me it seems like art of the times and a reflection of the times. And I didn't know that it was done cheaply until I was told. Maybe my eyes just don't look for that.
Well, if you're going to have the Xerox method, what better movie than one with black and white spotted dogs?
Yeah, really. For all the animation they had to do, that was the perfect one to use that on because otherwise, can you imagine how long that would have taken?
Yeah, and that was a good-looking movie too. It was like kind of stylized.
I don't know. What the
it's funny. I didn't like it as a kid the way it looked, but it aged. It aged really well on me. I was like, oh, this is actually a really gorgeous movie.
Yeah. He would be. I think that Walt would be disgusted by these live-action remakes. Speaking of 101 Dalmatians.
Oh my gosh, he would just be like, I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. No. Stop it.
No. Yeah.
He was famous. He was famous for saying, "We keep moving forward."
Yeah, that was the thing. You could tell that he wouldn't like it because he was so creative and innovative. He always was trying to say, "Oh, what can we do that's bigger? Or can we do that's better?" That's why he went from animation to making theme parks. That was his attitude.
Yeah, and then even when he was like forced to do things for the investors, like I don't know how familiar y'all are with the theme parks, but Walt Disney World, he was not interested in making a theme park. He was going into Florida to make a city of the future. But the investors were like, how about a Disneyland? And he's like, okay, all right, I'll give you a Disneyland, but I still want it to be different.
Did you say city of the future?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still want it to be different. I want to do different stuff with it. And then he died, and they were like, let's just copy stuff.
Right.
Yeah, because he died right before.
Yeah, but I mean, like originally the Fantasyland dark rides for Disney World were supposed to be totally different. There weren't going to be any copies.
Yeah, because that's
Right.
what. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say he came up with the idea for Epcot before the Magic Kingdom even entered his mind.
Yeah.
Magic Kingdom was forced on him by the investors. He didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Because Epcot, that's what it means. Experimental prototype community of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like even when he had to do things to please investors, he at least wanted to do it differently. He never liked to repeat himself.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Exactly.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
said,
Cool.
we keep moving forward. We don't want to, he would have no interest. The only thing I think that might interest him is something like the Jungle Book, because that had like the new technology that they were using. So that might have interested him, but just redoing what they'd already done, I just don't think that would have interested him at all.
Anyway, I think we've kind of drifted away from Song of the South.
We drifted away.
Song of the South is boring. It's not good.
You can edit this. It's fine.
Well,
But, I mean, we are
we're
talking about Walt.
We're talking about theme parks, anyways. We could segue into the Song of the South stuff in the theme park if we wanted
Sure.
to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, that.
So the very interesting thing that you may not be familiar with is they did not make an attraction for Song of the South because it was, a hit movie. It was more because they were looking desperately for an attraction. So what happened is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the country bears in the theme parks.
Yes.
I know what they are, but
I've
never been to the theme park, so
Yeah.
I just know they're vaguely creepy animatronic bears.
The country bears are my babies, and I love them all. But anyway, so what happened was when the country bears opened with the Magic Kingdom in 1971, it was a huge hit. It's like a tiny little theater there, so they would have like full houses all the time with huge lines. Everybody wanted to see the bears. So when they brought it over to Disneyland, they thought, we have to be prepared for these huge crowds. So they made it 2 theaters, and they gave the bears their own theme park land called Bear Country. And that was 1972. The thing is, Disneyland is local. So after everybody saw it, they were kind of like, we don't need to see it again. It's just the same show. And it died. Nobody went there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so what was going on was also at the time, audio animatronic shows after that were getting less popular. In 1974, they had a Tomorrowland animatronic show called America Sings for the Bicentennial of America, which had the most animatronics ever. And then that quickly died because nobody wanted to see that. And I'm sorry for America Sings fans. I know there's so many of you. Anyway, so what happened was they were trying desperately to utilize this land in Disneyland that nobody was going to. So Song of the South had a successful, mildly successful re-release in 1980. In 1983, Tony Baxter thought, hey, we're trying to think of a ride. Someone suggested a log fume. Hey, that could go really well with Song of the South. So that's how it happened. It's because the country bears, they messed up the country bears.
Well, that's interesting to me because I thought that Splash Mountain was all the way from the very beginning, like it was one of Walt's original rides.
Oh no,
I didn't
it was
realize that
added
it
in
was
1989.
Yeah,
So
which is so
it's
strange.
relatively new.
It is relatively new. That's what's so weird because they'd already stopped releasing the movie. It was already kind of on the outs. And
That's
so
what's
for
so
them,
fascinating about
yeah,
it.
it's so
Michael
bizarre.
Eisner came on in 84, and he didn't really like this movie, but they went along with it because I have to guess the concept. I don't know. Maybe I should have consulted a real Splash expert. He didn't really like the movie though, and he was the one who was kind of he's credited for suppressing the movie. The movie did have one more re-release in 86, supposedly to promote Splash Mountain. But from what I understand though, the ride was already being made, before he came on as CEO. And I guess he was also the one who gave it the name Splash Mountain because he didn't like Zippity Doo Dah River Run.
Well, it does roll off the tongue better.
Well, what's weird is he was like, it could promote our movie Splash, which is a hit. And
Oh my God.
What do you think of the major mountains? Where do you rank Splash?
I think
You've got Space, Thunder Mountain Railroad. You have Splash Mountain.
I think Splash is actually the best one, but I'm not that big of a fan of Space in the first place because I think it's a little overrated. The Disney park fans are going to kill me, but I'm kind of like, you're being fooled. Fans are blowing in your face in the dark. You're being fooled. You're not that fast.
The thing about Space Mountain is that it hurts my neck. I'm too old for it, I guess.
Which one have you been on?
In Disneyland.
Okay.
It whips you around so much. And Matterhorn is even worse.
Space Mountain is Disney World's Matterhorn. They don't have Matterhorn there. What?
Rachel, have you ever been on Splash Mountain?
I have been on Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain is pretty fun. I don't like drops all that much, but it's just one, so it's fun. It's nice and long, so if you're tired, you can go, and it's like a 12-minute ride.
Here's my question.
Go ahead.
How desperate were they that they picked this film as the theme of this ride? Like, how many people even knew about it?
I think one thing to understand is that Disney Imagineers are the biggest Disney nerds you will ever meet.
Oh, so they're like, I know all about this,
nerdy.
so this is relevant.
Well, I mean, to be fair to them, it had a successful re-release in 1980 for like the 100th anniversary of the Harris book, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's actually kind of an interesting progression there because Disneyland Splash Mountain opened in 1989. At that time, when they opened the ride, they assumed that you knew this movie. So, like, when you go into the attraction, you start by the fireplace where Uncle Remus tells his stories, and you're supposed to realize, Uncle Remus is telling us a story, and there's dialogue plaques throughout the queue where he's like telling more and more of the story. Nobody knows what those are anymore.
This also seems like, okay, so they're nerds, but this also seems naive or something to me because this film that incited picketers in the 1940s, they're like, oh yeah, let's make a ride out of that now.
Tell that to the people who re-released it in the 80s.
It's like,
my guess is nobody really cared in the 80s about it. I don't know.
What happened in the 80s, man? I don't know. Besides,
well, I mean, it was the dark time for Disney animation.
So they were just trying to figure out something to do with something. Yeah, I don't know.
Until Little Mermaid came out, it was. I mean, I loved Great Mouse Detective, but it wasn't until
Great Mouse Detective.
Oh my goodness, that bat was so scary.
Great Mouse Detective is the real start of the Disney Renaissance.
I don't know what other film aside from maybe Robin Hood, because that's like a little bit of a folksy vibe. I don't know what other property at that time. What else she would?
Because that's the thing, maybe, like Song of the South fit perfectly with the theming of the land with the country bears. All they had to do was
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear.
They were being frugal.
Well, I mean, they wanted to meet the country bears. They were just trying to find a way to bring people there.
Do they have a Robin Hood attraction?
No, they should, but
because that could have been really cool.
Yeah,
because Disney hates Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Well, Critter Country is more like southern base, where Robin Hood is like England. Robin Hood would fit better in Fantasyland, which is where the European stuff is.
Oh,
but
right.
still, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Disney has a. Sorry.
Could have gone with Bambi. I was going to say they could have went with Bambi because there's no Bambi attraction.
Yeah, you could have like little hunters behind trees, and little gunshot sounds.
Like the kid comes off the ride. I killed Bambi's mom.
Yeah, little plush rabbits floating somewhere.
I changed my mind. No Bambi. Never mind.
Hey, if they made Pinocchio, they could make a Bambi attraction. Like that would actually make more sense to me if they had Bambi and you had all of these little woodland creatures along the side.
they could have always just created their own IP, like they did with the Haunted Mansion, for example.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. The interesting thing about Disney parks is the 70s were kind of the death of, well, like, okay, early 80s. What happened was Epcot failed really big, and they just went really against original ideas. So it's like actually Imagineers like love working with Tokyo Disneyland, the Oriental Land Company, because it's actually another company, and they're really into trying new things. Whereas the U.S. parks, they're always like, but it's not IP based. We want something, you know. What about cars? Make something with cars, you know.
Are they just wanting to?
I mean,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, to be fair, like how successful would Disneyland be if it wasn't IP based? That's probably, if it weren't for those movies, that theme park would not be as successful. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing people forget about Disneyland is when it opened, only really Fantasyland was IP based. Everything else was original.
Yeah, because you had It's a Small World. You had, I mean, there were a bunch of rides that were unique, than not IP based. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting choice. They could have just done, I don't know, the Fun Log Bloom ride.
Would you say? Here's a question. Would you say at this point that Disney is more interested in riding the coattails of what has been successful in the past, or the coattails of somebody else's success that they can, like, oh, right, this is already successful, let's bring this on, than being really inventive now? I'm curious. What is your
in a sense,
period? I mean, I'm interested.
Like they go off the success of their film division. The parks, they do innovative technologies. That's one thing that is good. So they try new things. But it's not that the Imagineers aren't interested in trying new, completely original things. It's just that the Disney company will not fund them.
They are doing original things in the sense of like having trackless rides.
Yeah, that's the innovative stuff I'm talking about. Things like
that, like Rise of Resistance and the Ratatouille ride. But one thing that's frustrating as far as a parks person is that almost all original, unique things to each park has been taken away, so that it doesn't matter whether you're in Disneyland or Disney World or wherever it might be, you're going to have basically the same stuff going on. Whereas I think there used to be a lot more of a distinct, this is Disneyland, this is Disney World,
That's actually one of the interesting things with Splash. I didn't finish saying it earlier. So when they made Splash Mountain in Disney World in 1992, so this is kind of fascinating. So Disneyland, they assumed you knew the movie, and that opened 89. 92, Walt Disney World, they assume that you don't know the movie, so they put like plaques of the characters with like little summaries of them in the ride, like in the queue, so you know who they are. But also, if anybody Splash Mountain, Walt Disney, you'll never hear this from me usually because I'm a big Disneylander. I usually pretend that Disneyland has the best of everything, even if it's not true. Splash Mountain at Disney World is the better version.
I've been. That's cool.
You like the original or the second one?
Splash Mountain at Disney World is better made in general. It's bigger. The environments are better. It has better theming. Disneyland, they had like a tiny little space to put it in because they needed it to be in Critter Country.
Okay.
That's actually, it also ties into the controversy we have now with it being changed to Princess and the Frog. So I was a little blindsided by that decision, but I realized, you know what, this has been coming for a really long time.
Yeah.
So what happened like around the early 2000s is a worker who was cleaning the exterior of Space Mountain fell off because the height safety regulations weren't being followed enough.
No.
So what happened is all over the park, they like maintenance on these things that were high up were limited. So Splash Mountain, because so many of these things are so many of the animatronics are inaccessible, Splash Mountain basically became like Broken Mountain. Everything was broken. It's sad.
Mountain.
yeah. Dark Mountain, because the lights were broken too. So they did fix it up in 2018, 19. They had one major refurbishment where it all looked good again, but then it all broke down again shortly after because it's a water ride, right? So everything shorts out and they can't get to anything. So this has actually been a really long time coming. and I've accepted the fate. So Disney, it does kind of make sense to me that they've been thinking about completely gutting Splash for a long time.
Well, and another thing is, since it's not like from the 1950s, it would be harder to feel sad about, like, you're not giving up something super original.
That was what I was thinking, because I thought that this was like one of Walt Disney's originals. So now that I find out that it's not, it's from the 80s, it's like there shouldn't be that much of an upset about it being taken away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is such a good ride, though. I mean, it's so well designed. Just I don't know, like a lot of theme park fans are kind of like, oh, like the idea of like using the story of like, I don't know if you guys know the story of Splash Mountain. I'm sure you guys who have been to the theme parks do.
Yeah.
But basically, once Briar Fox catches Briar Rabbit tricks him into throwing him into the Briar Patch. And that's the big drop. You're being thrown into the Briar Patch, which is so clever, I think, from a theme park ride just designed perspective. So I feel like a lot of people are kind of they really like it because it's very well thought out. But yeah, I do agree. We're not losing too much historical value.
Part of it's probably just the whole change is hard thing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what it is. It's like
theme park fans hate change.
They went through the same thing when they replaced the Country Bears with Winnie the Pooh. Like it was like the same thing.
Over that.
It was like
I'm still not over my dentist retiring, so I don't know how much I can throw stones here.
Yeah, but I'm not an overly like sentimental person when it comes to Disney. I'm a huge fan though, but like I'm all for change. Like if it's and besides, like the Princess and the Frog, it's like what's gonna be the big difference with that anyway? Isn't it? It's still gonna be a water slide, isn't it? Like,
is it gonna be creepy? Because that movie got a little creepy.
Yeah. Well, I don't love Princess and the Frog, but I do think it was a long time coming and they needed to pick something. And Walt said that Disneyland is not a museum. It is going to be continually evolving, continually changing.
Right.
And I think that works really well, at least for Disneyland, is that it's right on the verge of Critter Country and New Orleans Square. So
that's why I think Princess and the Frog makes the most sense, because it's an American story. It takes place in Louisiana. It has the basic animals that would be needed in that general area that Song of the South
it could fit into both lands. Yeah.
Less controversial than Song of the South. That's probably a huge plus too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if part of the reason why they made Splash was even though Eisner started like not wanting to release it, I wonder part of it was kind of like reclaiming the song so they could use the song.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. Though. That's just a
Zippity Doodah has become like one of those iconic Disney songs, even though nobody knows where it's from.
I think I've heard that they took it out of the Esplanade loop. Like the Esplanade loop plays the iconic songs in the parks, and they took it out.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. At least that's what I heard.
You can't get rid of Zippity Doodah. You can't get rid of that.
You'll have to pry Zippity Doodah out of my cold dead hands.
Yeah.
It is a great classic song from the Sherman Brothers. There's no doubt about that.
To me, it was like Sarah said she liked the choral stuff, but the only one that I really remember, even though I only watched this 2 days ago, is Zippity Doodah.
I love How
the
Do You
rest
Do.
Just kind of it disappeared out of my head.
Yeah.
You know, How Do You Do was like the first. I think the How Do You Do was like the first song I ever heard from this movie, because that song was in the Disney sing-along song videos that I grew up with.
Was that at the beginning of the film?
Yes.
No, it was the.
Well, I mean,
wait a minute.
Towards, isn't it?
The Zippity Doodah was the first animated segment, and How Do You Do was the second one.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of the ride. Never mind. I'll block myself out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember which song this is right now. Okay.
Oh, it's the How Do You Do, Mighty Friendly Greeting. How do you do?
Is it
Say it when you're meeting, yeah.
Does it talk about spring or anything? Because I probably liked that one. I don't know.
I don't think it does.
No,
maybe my mind just wants it to sing about spring because the song's about spring.
Song of the South fans are listening to this in rage.
Oh,
They're
well,
cringing, yeah.
all 5 of them. Everybody else is
Who
going to
are
be
you?
like, what do they have to say about?
How do they know? How
mean,
can they get the spring song mixed up?
I just feel like Song of the South is like an after school special. It is so bland.
Okay, maybe somebody can answer this question for me too. How big? Because I may be making more people mad than I realize. How big is the fan base of this film that I never
Not at all.
watched as a child?
None.
I feel, not big. It's not big.
This has
A lot
gotten more of a
people
fan
haven't-
base after, not being released. Let's be real.
Yeah.
The forbidden fruit thing, or
But I mean, like a super obsessed Disney fans looked it up. They might have not cared otherwise.
right,
You know what I mean?
right.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. They should just
Exactly.
release it and move on.
Yeah.
Move on with our lives.
I mean, Peter Pan is available on Disney Plus. I mean, it not to a kids account, but
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What is?
Peter Pan.
Peter Pan. I'm sorry, Eli. Go ahead.
Well, Bob Iger talks about this movie, and he said that it's just it's so he basically just thinks it's too inappropriate to just release for a modern audience. It just seems like it's he says that he's talking about it internally with the other executives about how they should handle it. They say they want to do something with it. They just haven't come up with anything yet. They just don't think it should be on Disney Plus.
I think what they should have done is in the 2000s, they had some collectors line of exclusive Disney stuff on DVD.
Those tins.
Yeah, they should have released it with that. Problem solved, but they didn't.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Yeah, then only the major collectors would have gotten it. Not because what Disney is concerned about is it becoming mainstream, I guess, and then criticism they could get.
I feel like sure there probably is a point where you really have to draw a line about racially offensive content, but at the same time, I think people need to be able to watch things in the context of the era. Sure, if you want to put, it's like I don't want to be denied watching a cartoon that has smoking in it just because people shouldn't smoke. And and I remember growing up, I was both surprised by racism, but I wasn't totally I wasn't shielded from old content that would be considered offensive today. And I think that you need to get the full picture of history, be able to watch some of these things and say, well, that was then, and they didn't necessarily mean it as offensively as we take it now. Sometimes they would have. I mean, the Thin Man, the way that the black man was portrayed on the Thin Man was absolutely ridiculous because they made him look so stupid, but yet he was an extremely skilled musician. So you knew what they were doing there. It was supposed to be funny, but it was ridiculous. Whereas with other stuff, I think sometimes it's done more innocently. That doesn't mean that you imitate it yourself, but to just throw everything out without being able to experience.
The problem is people don't want to understand historical context. They can't. And I think also our problem is parents don't want to talk to their kids about the media they consume.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, I kind of like what they've, you guys heard the controversy about Peter Pan being canceled because the kids' accounts on Disney Plus can't access it. You have to access it through an adult account.
Yeah.
Why is that being canceled?
People,
It's not being
people
canceled,
over complaining.
they're just saying it's canceled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're trying to get clicks, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm great. Then the parents can talk to them about why what makes the Red Man red is not, appropriate nowadays.
Yeah.
Well,
I forgot about that.
Peter Pan was one of the movies I grew up with as a kid, and I grew up watching that Red Man sequence throughout my entire childhood.
I don't feel like that ever made me look down on Native Americans.
No, it didn't. That's the thing. It didn't. I grew up because my mom raised me properly, and I'm an intelligent person, so I know that that's not the accurate portrayal of Native Americans. So it didn't do anything. All it did was just, this is just a stupid cartoon. Like, so it's not as harmful as people think it is.
And that's a
not that I'm saying.
Here's another rant.
Not that I'm saying they should have put like a warning label on it, but anyway.
I just think people are very, very concerned about stereotypes, and I think that people also need to have discernment with stereotypes of like, are they actually portraying something that is unique about a culture and say, oh, that's a stereotype, so we have to get rid of it, and at the same time erasing something that's unique about it. And I'm not saying that about the Peter Pan song, okay?
No. I know what you're saying, yeah.
But it's like somebody could kid me about my Canadian heritage and just get in my face and be like, hey, you like maple syrup? And it's like, heck yeah. And I like apple pie and you know, snowdrifts too.
And I'm an American, so that means I'm fat and I like to hunt. Like, it's like those are the stereotypes, and that's a balancing act because sometimes they cross over and you have to be aware.
Right.
Well, especially when you're dealing with humor, because part of humor is kind of making fun of our stereotypes and things that we do without even thinking about it. And
I think that there needs to be room for stereotypes that are good-natured and not just a blanket, oh, all stereotypes are bad, but you know.
Yeah, I feel like it's case by case basis. You have to look at each situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And intent matters as well.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like definitely in context of history, we can say Song of the South is not intended to portray African Americans negatively. It's not intended that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Intention and context are like really important.
Yes.
Definitely.
And I've seen both in vintage film.
Yeah. Well, this discussion is much more interesting than Song of the South.
I'm enjoying it.
That's kind of just the way this film goes. Talking about it is more, because have you noticed we haven't really talked about the film itself?
Yeah.
And I think that's fine in this case. Like the plot is so basic, and we kind of have talked about different things throughout the whole thing.
But people aren't going to have no idea when I said talking about Johnny being gored, but he wasn't really gored. So
okay, well, at the end, he runs away and gets hit by a bull, and he winds up in bed, and yeah, that's where that goes.
The end.
And he almost dies if not for Uncle Remus telling him stories.
That was the magical part of the movie. Oh my god, he was saved by Uncle Remus's story.
That was like the tear falling on the dying man's cheek or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Brought him back to life.
And then it's weird also because it's like it still doesn't even end with him waking up to Uncle Remus. His parents take over. So I'm like, what's going on, Walt? What? But you know, one thing I do want to kind of talk about Song of the South is I feel like a lot of people kind of don't get that Walt's talking, like he's using Song of the South as a vehicle to talk about how important stories are.
Mm.
I mean, well, yeah. Point. I mean, if you don't focus on the controversial parts of the film and just only focus on what his intention was, then yeah, you start getting blinded.
Like how the stories taught wisdom and gave him strength and meaning, and when that was taken away, it basically screwed everything up. Is that like a loop? Is that like him saying the fact that I tell stories is important? Is that what you're saying? Or
I think so. Well, I mean, I think to Walt, stories meant a lot. And going along with me, you know, maybe using this film to project about his parental issues, you know, like not getting his dad to be proud of where he was in life. I feel like he could be making the point here that just because he works on stories doesn't mean they're any less important than anything else. That stories influence who we are as people. And also going back to like Alice again, the story's origin from Alice, that's actually the point of the original Alice books as well, the importance of stories and sharing them. So it's kind of like I feel like that was his point with the movie, not really necessarily anything else.
I hadn't thought of that at all.
Like Uncle Remus at one point says something like, and it's been a while since I watched it, but something like, if stories are so like pointless, then why do they do so much good? Something like that. I forget now.
Yeah, I remember that. He said something like that. It was good lines.
Do you think
it was a good line?
Do you think he felt a little bit insecure about his career? Like, oh man, people think I'm just wasting my time telling silly stories. Or maybe about his dad, maybe feeling like his dad thought that he was wasting his time.
His dad definitely thought he was wasting his time. So,
See,
yeah, I think so.
That's also human nature to be like, but hey, what I care about is valuable and here's why. And maybe he felt like he couldn't say that to his dad, but he could express it in other ways.
Mm. And I think that's also kind of why later in life he ended up branching out of just storytelling.
To what?
Oh, to theme parks, theme parks are storytelling, but like the city thing, for instance, and also like, It's a Small World was a really big project about like the idea of world peace in general, not just about ride.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the thing about the storytelling and the theme parks that making movies and making theme parks that are similar is that it seems like he always consistently wanted to put the audience through like a really memorable experience, and he wanted to put them through something. Like he wanted to, like, even when he was making Fantasia, and he wanted surround sound and smell of it and in 3D, and like he is super ambitious about that, and that was very Disneyland-like when he thought like that back then, and I feel like that's his main thing, even throughout his career, is just consistently he just wants to give people an experience.
He also wanted to like inspire people. You can look at the way like New Tomorrowland in 1967. He died before then, but he was a part of like developing it. It was supposed to inspire people. Basically, all of Disneyland is really supposed to inspire people for a better future while honoring the past.
Yeah, right.
This is off topic and continuing on our rabbit trail here, but how do you think that Walt would feel about the Disney empire now?
Conflicted.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he would. I think that he would. I think that he would be excited, about parts of it, but he would be frustrated by the blandness by a lot of it.
I feel like he would be really interested in like CGI, maybe more immersive cinema that we're getting to. I feel like he would love VR, which really frustrated me when the Disney company said they weren't going to go into VR really. Because he would have been all over that.
Well, like something, can you imagine what he would think about Cruella? He would die again.
Oh yeah, he would hate the remakes. Yeah.
He hated the original. So.
Yeah. You could if you study the history of Walt Disney, you can just sort of tell what he would like. You could tell he would like Pixar. You could tell he would like virtual reality. He would be a fan of like
anything progressive.
Anything progressive, exactly.
And I feel like he would be annoyed at the Disney company in general for like stagnating and not really going beyond entertainment.
I think he would love Zootopia. I think Zootopia is totally...
Oh, I think he would love Zootopia because it's able to tell like a message with storytelling.
Yeah.
He would have loved it.
Basically, they lost their visionary and now they're trying to work with, come up with their own ideas and work with what they have, sounds like.
And another thing that Walt Disney would have loved, because he talked about wanting to do this, but he never lived to see it accomplished, was that the fact that they release a Disney animated movie every single year. That was something he always wanted, and he would have liked that they did. He would have liked that they do that now.
And I think he would have loved streaming.
And I actually think he would have been a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I feel like him and Kevin Feige are of sort of the same cloth.
I kind of agree, yeah.
I never really thought about that, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm not too familiar with Marvel, but I could see him like, I did watch WandaVision though, and I could see him liking something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to break things up, but I have to go. It has been so much fun to talk with all of you.
Yeah,
nice to meet you guys.
This was really great.
You're a busy podcaster. I should have known you had to leave.
Well, it has been an hour and a half. So
yeah.
Well, do you want to let people know where they can find you, Rachel?
Yes, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out, and also at the Hallmarkies podcast.
And Eli?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm mostly hanging out on Twitter at eJunkie2014, but I also have a blog, Entertainment Junkie blog. And if you visit me on Twitter, then I'll send you the link to that. And that's where I talk about the entertainment industry, films, movies, TV shows, video games, all that.
And Jenna?
My stuff is all Alice in Wonderland. You can find me on Phantom Wise on YouTube, and then I'm part of the Curiouser Archive on YouTube. I do have, if you're interested in stories and old anime, I am uploading one on another channel called Love Gift of a Fairy Tale.
Okay. And Sarah doesn't really do much
You can
for social
find me.
media.
You can find me if you really try, but it might be hard. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in the Midwest. Good luck.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I think this went really great. I'm so glad this worked out and we were able to do this film. I actually think this turned out better than I thought it was going to. So
it was
Same.
nice. It was nice meeting all of you.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
used to you on the channel, but not actually talking to any of you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was finally nice to talk. I've heard about you guys before.
Yeah, it was fun.
I never talked to Sarah before, and I've never talked to, I don't remember what's your name?
Jenna.
Jenna. I never talked to Jenna before either, so it was nice meeting you too.
yeah, I'm glad we were all able to get together and do this. This is a lot of fun.
All right, we'll talk to you all later. Bye.
Okay, have a good rest of the day.
Thanks for listening to the Disney Movie Marathon. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform or to our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow my co-hosts as well, and if you want more content from us, check out one of the other podcasts in the iHeart Movies Podcast Network, or check out my brand new Patreon. My link tree, as well as any other relevant links, will be in the description. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.